Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Colby Cunningham sat in the mess hall at Fort Bragg, his coffee gone cold while he stared at the photo on his phone. Stephanie's 8th grade graduation picture, bright smile, those same green eyes he saw in a mirror every morning. 3 months since he'd seen her in person. The custody arrangement was a knife that twisted every single day. 15 years in the Army. 3 deployments. A silver star gathering dust in a drawer somewhere. But none of it mattered when your daughter lived 4 states away with a woman who'd stopped being your wife the moment she decided military life wasn't fulfilling enough. Cunningham, you listening? Colby looked up at Sergeant Major Tom McConnell, a mountain of a man with a graying beard and eyes that had seen Fallujah, Kandahar, and things they didn't put in after-action reports. 3 wars. 30 years of service. The kind of man who could end a bar fight just by standing up. Sorry, Tom. What were you saying? I was saying you should take that leave you've been putting off. Go see your kid. Colby forced a smile. Melissa makes it complicated. Every visit turns into World War III. Then maybe it's time to remind her who won the last 2 world wars, Tom said, though his tone suggested he was half joking. Half. The truth was more complicated than that. Melissa Schwartz, she'd taken back her maiden name the day the divorce finalized, had remarried within a year. Some guy named Vicente Ellis. Colby had never met him, but Stephanie's voice always got quiet when she mentioned him. Distant, like she was measuring her words. She's a good kid, Colby said, more to himself than Tom. Smart. Tougher than me at that age. She's got your blood, Tom replied. That means something. Colby pocketed his phone and stood. He had training drills to run, reports to file, the endless machinery of military life that ground forward whether you were ready or not. But something gnawed at him. That quietness in Stephanie's voice during their last call. The way she'd said, everything's fine, a little too quickly. He made a mental note to call her tonight, just to check in. Stephanie Cunningham knew the pattern by now. When Vicente Ellis came home after midnight, smelling like cigarettes and something sharper, chemicals, maybe, her mother would retreat to the bedroom and close the door. The message was clear. Handle it yourself. She'd been handling it for 11 months. Ever since Mom married Vicente, and they moved into his place on Bleecker Street, in the part of town where police sirens were the neighborhood lullaby. The house always had people coming and going at strange hours. Men with tattoos that crawled up their necks, women with hollow eyes and jittery hands. Vicente called them business associates. Stephanie called them what they were, criminals. Vicente Ellis had a story he liked to tell at dinner, back when they still had family dinners. How he'd built his reputation from nothing. How his crew, he called it the Ellis Collective, controlled 3 neighborhoods in the city. Drugs, protection rackets, illegal gambling. He didn't hide it. In fact, he seemed proud of it, especially when he'd had a few drinks. Your dad's a soldier, he'd said once, his lip curling. That's cute. Soldiers follow orders. I give orders. See the difference, Stephanie? She'd learned not to answer. Learned not to react when he got too close, when his hand lingered on her shoulder a second too long. Learned not to flinch when he raised his voice at her mother, when the sounds of arguments bled through the walls late at night. But tonight was different. Tonight, Vicente had come home in a rage. Some deal had gone wrong. Some rival crew had pushed into his territory. Stephanie had been in the kitchen, trying to stay invisible, when he'd spotted her. You think you're better than us? Walking around with that attitude, like you're some princess? I didn't say anything. The slap came fast, hard enough to snap her head to the side, to make her ears ring. She stumbled back, catching herself on the counter. Vicente, stop! Her mother's voice from the hallway, but she didn't move closer. Never did. Shut up, Melissa. I'm teaching your daughter some respect. Stephanie ran, up the stairs, into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. Her face throbbed. She could already feel the swelling starting, see the red mark in the mirror that would bloom into a bruise by morning. Her phone was in her pocket. Her hand shook as she opened the camera, took a photo. The evidence stared back at her. Split lip, darkening eye, the unmistakable shape of a hand across her cheek. She typed the message to her dad with trembling fingers. Stepdad said soldiers don't scare him. His gang runs the city. Hit send before she could second-guess it. before fear could swallow her whole. Then she sat on the bathroom floor, hugging her knees, and waited. The text came through at 2:47 a.m. Colby woke to his phone buzzing on the nightstand, that sixth sense from too many midnight deployments telling him this wasn't a drill. He grabbed it, squinted at the screen, and felt his blood turn to ice water. The photo loaded slowly. Each pixel was a knife. Stephanie's face, his daughter's face, swollen, bruised, her lips split open. One eye already purple, the other wide with fear. Then the message beneath it. He read it 3 times. 4. His hands didn't shake. That was the funny thing. Years of combat had taught him to go perfectly still when violence called. His heartbeat actually slowed, breathing steady. The rage that filled him was cold, surgical, absolute. He dialed Stephanie, straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same result. Then he called Melissa. She answered on the 5th ring, groggy. Colby? It's 3 a.m. Where is she? What? Where? Is? Stephanie. A pause. She's asleep. What's this about? She texted me a photo of her face. Looks like someone used her for boxing practice. So I'll ask again, where is she? Another pause, longer. When Melissa spoke again, her voice had changed. Defensive. She probably fell. Fell. Your daughter fell and gave herself a black eye and a split lip in the perfect shape of someone's hand. You don't know what it's like here, Colby. You're never around. You don't see. I see plenty. I see my kid in a house with a piece of shit who thinks he runs a gang. And I see you doing nothing about it. Don't you dare. I'm coming to get her. Tomorrow. And if Vicente wants to explain to me what happened, he can do it to my face. He'll kill you, Melissa said quietly. He's not. He's not like your army buddies. He has people. Dangerous people. Colby smiled, though there was no humor in it. Good. I'll bring mine. He hung up. 5 minutes later, he was in the barracks hallway, pounding on Tom McConnell's door. The sergeant major opened it in his PT shorts, took one look at Colby's face, and stepped aside. Show me. Colby handed over the phone. Tom stared at the photo for a long time. When he looked up, something ancient and terrible moved behind his eyes. The kind of thing that came from watching friends die, from making impossible choices, from surviving when survival meant carrying the weight of every man who didn't make it home. We're all going, Tom said simply. Every last one. Within an hour, Colby had made 12 calls. To men scattered across the base, across the country. Men who'd served with him in places where the rules of engagement were complicated and the moral lines blurred. Men who understood that some things, family, loyalty, the protection of the innocent, were worth breaking those rules for. Mason Gross, a sniper who could put a round through a quarter at 800 yards. Felix Suarez, who spoke 4 languages and could talk his way into or out of any situation. Warner Moses, built like a truck and just as subtle. Judson Lopez, their medic, who'd patched more holes in human bodies than he could count. Irving Sloan, their comms expert and the best wheelman Colby had ever seen. And more. Others. Veterans from different units, different wars, all connected by the same thread. They'd bled together, fought together, and when one of them called, the rest answered. By dawn, 14 men were loading into 3 vehicles. They wore civilian clothes, but the way they moved, the way they checked equipment and communicated in hand signals, everything about them screamed military. Tom climbed into the passenger seat of Colby's truck, a tactical pack at his feet that definitely didn't contain anything you'd find at a sporting goods store. 4 states is a long drive, Tom said. Gives us time to plan. Plan's simple, Colby replied, starting the engine. Get my daughter out. Make sure Vicente Ellis understands what happens when you put your hands on someone's kid. And if his gang shows up, Colby pulled out of the parking lot, his jaw set. Then they'll learn the difference between playing soldier and meeting real ones. The convoy rolled through the base gates as the sun rose, 14 combat veterans with a singular mission. Behind them, Fort Bragg disappeared into morning mist. Ahead, a reckoning waited. Vicente Ellis had built his empire on fear. Not the kind that came from muscles or guns. Plenty of street thugs had those. His fear was calculated, systematic. You didn't just beat someone who crossed him. You made an example. You hurt what they loved. You made sure everyone in a 3-block radius knew what happened when you disrespected Vicente Ellis. The Ellis Collective wasn't the biggest operation in the city, but it was the most vicious. 26 members, all carefully chosen. Demetrius Shelton, his right hand, had done time for aggravated assault. Curtis Hester ran their drug distribution through a network of dealers so terrified they'd never flip. Anthony Leon handled enforcement, collections, punishments, the messy work that kept everyone in line. They operated out of a warehouse in the industrial district, a converted auto body shop with reinforced doors and cameras on every corner. Inside, Vicente held court like a king, surrounded by his lieutenants, counting money and planning the next move against the rival crews trying to muscle in on his territory. He was there now, in his office on the second floor, when Demetrius knocked and entered without waiting for permission. The big man looked troubled. "We got a problem." Vicente looked up from the ledger he'd been reviewing. "Which problem? The Russians? The cops? The shipment from Miami?" "None of those." Demetrius pulled out his phone, showed him a message. "Got word from Anthony. Melissa's ex-husband is in town. Showed up at the house this morning with a crew." Vicente leaned back his chair, unconcerned. "Let me guess. The soldier boy wants to play hero because I disciplined his brat. It's not just him. Anthony says there's at least a dozen guys. All of them military-looking. Professional. So what?" Vicente spread his hands. "We've dealt with professionals before. Remember that off-duty cop who tried to shake us down? Where is he now?" "In a wheelchair," Demetrius admitted. "But boss, these guys..." "Anthony says they moved like a unit. Tactical. They didn't start anything at the house, just took the girl and left. But the way they carried themselves. You're scared of some jarheads?" Vicente stood, his voice rising. "Is that what you're telling me? That the Ellis Collective, the crew that runs this city, is afraid of a few soldiers?" "I'm telling you we should be careful." Vicente walked to the window overlooking the warehouse floor. Below, his crew worked, counting product, loading shipments, the machinery of his empire churning forward. He built this, clawed his way up from nothing. No way some military nobody was going to take it from him. "Find out where they're staying," Vicente said. "Then send a message. Something memorable. I want this Cunningham to understand that his daughter's punishment was nothing compared to what happens when you come into my city and challenge me." Demetrius nodded slowly. "What kind of message?" "The permanent kind." Stephanie sat in the motel room, an ice pack pressed to her face, while her father paced like a caged animal. They'd driven her straight from the house on Bleecker Street. Mom hadn't even tried to stop them, and now they were holed up in a Holiday and on the edge of town. The room was crowded with men. Big men, quiet men, the kind who didn't need to raise their voices to command attention. Tom McConnell sat in the corner, cleaning a handgun with the casual focus of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. Mason Gross stood by the window, watching the parking lot through binoculars. The others were spread throughout the adjacent rooms, maintaining a perimeter that would make breaking in a very, very bad idea. "I shouldn't have texted you," Stephanie said quietly. I didn't know you'd." "You did exactly right," Colby interrupted, stopping his pacing to kneel in front of her. "Look at me, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Vicente put his hands on you. That's on him. Not you. Never you. But he'll be so angry." "Good. Let him be angry. Let him come find me and explain what happened." Tom spoke up from the corner. "We need intel. This Ellis character has a crew, probably armed, definitely dangerous. Going in blind is how people get killed." Felix Suarez, who'd been working on a laptop in the corner, cleared his throat. "Already on it. Vicente Ellis, age 37, criminal record dating back to juvenile detention. Assault, drug trafficking, racketeering. Never served serious time. Witnesses keep recanting. Evidence keeps disappearing. The Ellis Collective operates under the radar, but they're connected. Payoffs to dirty cops, favors traded with other gangs. He's not some street punk. He's organized." "How many in his crew?" Warner Moses asked. "Best estimate? 25 to 30. They operate out of a warehouse in the industrial district. Heavy security, cameras, the works." Colby absorbed this information, his mind already tactical. You didn't survive 3 deployments by charging in stupid. You planned. You gathered intelligence. You found the enemy's weakness and exploited it. What else? He asked Felix. His money comes from 3 sources: drugs, protection rackets, and illegal gambling. He's got a weekly poker game that attracts some serious players. We're talking city councilmen, police captains, businessmen who like to pretend they're gangsters. Everyone pays Vicente a cut. When's the next game? Tomorrow night. Colby smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Then I think we should attend. Tom raised an eyebrow. You want to walk into his headquarters? I want to send a message. Show Vicente that he's not untouchable, that his empire has cracks. That's insane, Stephanie said. He'll kill you. Colby turned to his daughter, and for the first time since arriving, his expression softened. Sweetheart, I've been shot at by people a lot scarier than Vicente Ellis. I've had mortars dropped on my position and survived ambushes in places where backup was hours away. Your stepdad might run a gang, but he's never faced someone who fights back with equal force. That changes tonight. What's the plan? Tom asked. Colby looked around the room at his brothers in arms. Men who'd followed him through hell. Men who'd trust him with their lives because he'd proven again and again that he'd never waste that trust. We hit them where it hurts. Their money, their reputation, their sense of control. Vicente wants to be king? We're going to remind him what happens when you build your throne on sand. The warehouse was exactly as Felix had described it. Converted auto body shop, reinforced doors, cameras everywhere. But Colby had learned a long time ago that every fortress had a weakness. You just had to find it. They approached at 9 p.m., 3 vehicles parking 2 blocks away. Colby, Tom, and Felix walked up to the front door like they belonged there. Confidence was a weapon. Act like you had permission, and people hesitated long enough for you to exploit that hesitation. The guard at the door was young, maybe 22, with gang tattoos and a pistol poorly concealed under his jacket. He held up a hand as they approached. Private event. We're here for the poker game, Felix said smoothly, his tone suggesting that questioning them further would be a mistake. Vicente's expecting us. Names? Felix rattled off 3 aliases they prepared. The guard checked a list, frowned, then pulled out a radio. That was when Tom stepped forward. You really want to make Vicente look bad by turning away his guests? Tom's voice was quiet, but there was steel underneath. The voice of a man who'd commanded soldiers in combat. Kid, I've been playing these games since before you were born. So either you let us in, or you explain to your boss why you cost him 10 grand in buy-ins. The guard wavered. Colby could see it in his eyes, the uncertainty, the calculation. Finally, he stepped aside. Straight back, 2nd floor. And keep your hands where I can see them. They walked in. The warehouse floor was a maze of crates and equipment, but Colby's real focus was mapping exits, counting guards, noting sight lines. 6 armed men on the ground floor. Cameras in the corners, but blind spots near the loading dock. The kind of security designed to intimidate amateurs, but full of holes if you knew where to look. The staircase led to Vicente's office. Through the windows, Colby could see the poker game in progress. 8 men around a table, cards and cash and whiskey glasses. Vicente sat at the head, holding court. They walked in. Vicente looked up, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition to fury in the span of a heartbeat. Cunningham. Vicente. Colby pulled out a chair, sat down like he owned the place. Heard you had a game. Thought I'd join. The other players shifted uncomfortably. Colby recognized a few faces from Felix's briefing. Councilman, police captain, businessman. Men who definitely didn't want to be identified in an illegal gambling operation. Vicente's jaw clenched. You've got balls walking in here. I've got more than that. Colby leaned back, completely relaxed despite being surrounded by armed men. See, Vicente, you made a mistake. You hurt my daughter. Now, I could have gone to the cops, but we both know they're in your pocket. He nodded at the police captain, who had the grace to look ashamed. I could have filed for custody, but the courts are slow, and my daughter can't wait months for bureaucrats to decide she's worth protecting. So what? You came here to threaten me? In my place, surrounded by my people? No. Colby smiled. I came here to offer you a choice. Vicente laughed, but it sounded forced. What choice is that? You let my daughter go. No contact, no visits, nothing. Melissa can see her, but you stay out of her life completely. You do that, and I walk away. You get to keep your little empire, your poker games, all of it. And if I refuse? Colby's smile disappeared. Then I dismantle everything you've built, brick by brick, until there's nothing left but rubble and regret. Your choice, Vicente. Make it now. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Vicente stood, his hand moving toward the gun at his waist. That's when Tom and Felix drew their weapons. Not guns, tasers. Military grade, capable of dropping a man instantly. They hit Demetrius and Curtis before anyone could react, both men crashing to the floor in convulsing heaps. The other players scrambled away from the table. The guard started to move, but Colby held up a hand. Everyone relax. We're not here to hurt anyone. We're here to deliver a message. He looked at Vicente, who'd frozen with his hand on his gun. Touch that weapon, and you'll join your boys on the floor. Don't, and you live to see tomorrow. Your call. Vicente's hand fell away. Smart man. Colby stood, pushed his chair back. Remember what I said, Vicente. Leave my daughter alone, or I'll come back. And next time, I won't be this polite. They walked out the way they'd come in, past stunned guards and terrified gangsters, into the night air that felt suddenly cold and electric. Behind them, the warehouse erupted in shouted orders and confusion. That went well, Felix said dryly. He won't let this go, Tom observed. I know, Colby replied. But now he knows we're not afraid. And that changes everything. Vicente Ellis had never been humiliated like that. Never. In his own warehouse, in front of his crew, in front of the very men he'd spent years impressing with his power. Cunningham had walked in like he owned the place and walked out without a scratch. Unacceptable. He sat in his office now, 30 hours after the poker game, surrounded by what remained of his inner circle. Demetrius still looked shaky from the taser, and Curtis had refused to make eye contact since the incident. The others, Anthony, Columbus Berger, Davis O'Connell, waited for orders with the nervous energy of men who just realized their boss might be vulnerable. I want them found, Vicente said quietly, dangerously. Every last one of those soldiers. I want addresses, families, weak points. And then I want them to hurt the way I hurt right now. Boss, Demetrius ventured carefully. These guys aren't random thugs. They're trained, professional. Going after them directly might. Might what? Make me look weak? That ship sailed when they tasered you in front of a city councilman. Vicente slammed his fist on the desk. I built the Ellis Collective on fear, on reputation. If word gets out that some soldiers pushed me around and I did nothing, we're done. Every crew in this city will come for us. Anthony Leon spoke up, his voice cold. Then we hit them where they can't defend. The motel, maybe. Catch them sleeping. Too obvious, Columbus said. The crew strategist had a criminal mind that Vicente usually appreciated. They'll be expecting retaliation. Probably have guards posted. We need something smarter. Vicente stared at the wall, thinking. Cunningham had a weakness. They all did. And he'd shown his hand. The daughter. Everything he'd done was for her. The girl, Vicente said slowly. She's the leverage. We take her, we control him. She's staying with the soldiers, Demetrius pointed out. Protected. Then we draw him out. Make him choose between protecting her and stopping us from burning his whole world down. Vicente smiled, and it was the expression of a man who'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Get everyone. Every member of the Ellis Collective. We're going to war. The call came at 11 p.m. Colby's phone lit up with an unknown number, and every instinct told him not to answer. But he did. Vicente's voice crackled through the speaker. Cunningham, you listening? I'm listening. Good. Because here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow noon, you're going to meet me at the old Jefferson factory on Riverside. Just you. You come alone, you come unarmed, and maybe I don't kill everyone you care about. That's supposed to scare me. It should. Vicente's voice dropped lower. Because right now, I've got your ex-wife. And she's having a very bad night. Colby's blood went cold. You're lying. Am I? Hold on. A pause. Then Melissa's voice, terrified and distant. Colby, don't come. It's a trap. A slap, a cry cut short. Noon tomorrow, Vicente repeated. Jefferson Factory. Don't be late. The line went dead. Tom was on his feet instantly. We need to move now. Hit them before. It's a trap, Colby said flatly. Everything about this is designed to draw me out. So what do you want to do? Colby looked around the motel room. At the men who'd dropped everything to help him. At Stephanie, who'd fallen asleep on one of the beds, finally feeling safe for the first time in months. At the maps and plans they'd been making for a controlled, surgical strike against Vicente's operation. All of that went out the window now. We go, Colby said, but not the way he expects. The Jefferson Factory had been abandoned for a decade. 3 stories of rusted metal and broken windows, surrounded by overgrown lots and chain-link fence. The perfect place for an ambush. Vicente arrived at 11:30 a.m. with 20 members of the Ellis Collective. He'd positioned them throughout the factory, on the upper floors with rifles, behind cover on the ground level, in vehicles outside as backup. Melissa was tied to a chair in the center of the main floor, gagged, crying. It was beautiful, really. Cunningham would walk through those doors at noon, and Vicente would have him surrounded. No amount of military training saved you from 20 guns pointed at your head. Noon came. The doors didn't open. 11:59 turned to 12:01. Then 12:05. Where is he? Demetrius muttered. Vicente checked his phone. Nothing. He looked at the doors, at the empty lot outside, frustration building. Maybe he's smarter than I thought. That's when the explosion happened. Not at the factory. 6 blocks away, at the warehouse. The one that held the Ellis Collective's money, drugs, and records. The one they'd left lightly defended because everyone was here. Vicente's phone lit up with calls. He answered, and the screaming that came through made his stomach drop. Boss, we're under attack. Multiple vehicles, military grade. Another explosion, this one from the direction of Vicente's house on Bleecker Street. Then a third, from the chop shop where they stored stolen vehicles. Cunningham wasn't coming to the factory. He was destroying everything Vicente owned. Fall back, Vicente shouted. Everyone, back to the warehouse. They piled into vehicles, leaving Melissa tied to the chair in their panic. The convoy roared through the streets, arriving at the warehouse to find it in flames. Not just burning, demolished. Someone had planted charges with professional precision, bringing down walls and ceilings in a controlled collapse. And standing in the street, surrounded by 14 combat veterans in tactical gear, was Colby Cunningham. Looking for me? Colby called out. Vicente stumbled out of his car, staring at the ruins of his empire. You destroyed everything. Just like I promised. Colby walked forward, his men flanking him. You had a choice, Vicente. Leave my daughter alone. But you chose violence. You chose escalation. So here we are. I'll kill you. Vicente pulled his gun, but Warner Moses was faster, his rifle trained on Vicente's head before the pistol cleared its holster. I wouldn't, Warner said calmly. Vicente looked around at his crew. 20 men, all armed, all dangerous. But they were facing 14 veterans who'd survived actual wars. Men who moved with the precision of a military unit. Men who weren't posturing or playing gangster. They were soldiers, and this was what they did. The Ellis Collective's guns lowered, one by one. It's over, Colby said. Your money's gone. Your product's gone. Your reputation's destroyed. Every cop and gangster in this city is going to hear how the Ellis Collective got taken down by one man and his friends. You'll be a joke, Vicente. Nothing more. Vicente's hand shook. Then what's stopping me from pulling this trigger right now? Taking you with me. Because you're not a soldier, Colby said quietly. You're a bully. And bullies fold when someone hits back. For a long moment, Vicente's finger hovered on the trigger. Then, slowly, he lowered the gun. Not from courage, but from the crushing realization that he'd lost. That everything he'd built was gone. Tom stepped forward, pulled out his phone, and dialed. This is Sergeant Major McConnell, Fort Bragg. I'd like to report a significant quantity of illegal narcotics at these coordinates. Yes, I'll hold. Vicente's eyes widened. You're calling the cops? Not just any cops, Tom replied. Federal agents. The kind who don't take bribes. The kind who will put you away for 20 years minimum. You wanted to play gangster, Vicente. Now you get to live like one, in a cell. Sirens rose in the distance, growing louder. 3 weeks later, Colby sat in a diner with Stephanie, watching her devour a stack of pancakes with the appetite of someone who finally felt safe eating. The bruises had faded. The fear in her eyes had been replaced by something else. Relief. Maybe hope. Vicente Ellis was in federal custody, along with 15 members of the Ellis Collective. The DA was building a case that would put them away for decades. The rest of the gang had scattered, leaderless and broken. The city was breathing a little easier. Melissa had signed over full custody without a fight. The shame of what she'd allowed to happen, the guilt of choosing a monster over her daughter, it had broken something in her. Stephanie would visit her mother in time. But for now, she needed distance. "Dad," Stephanie said, putting down her fork. "Can I ask you something? Anything. How did you know it would work? The plan, I mean. What if Vicente had just shot you? Or caught you?" Colby smiled. "I didn't know for certain. But I've learned something in 15 years of military service. Fear is a weapon, but so is conviction. Vicente's whole empire was built on making people afraid. But when someone stands up to him, really stands up, that fear turns around. It eats him from the inside. You weren't scared, terrified. He met her eyes, but more scared of losing you. That's the thing about being a parent, sweetheart. Your fear for your kids is always bigger than your fear for yourself." Tom walked into the diner then, sliding into the booth beside them. He'd stayed in town to help with the federal investigation, giving testimony about what they'd found at the warehouse. The Army had granted him extended leave, apparently. Taking down a criminal organization counted as community service. "Got some news," Tom said. "Vicente's lawyer is trying to make a deal, offering to flip on his suppliers, the dirty cops, everyone. Man singing like a canary." "Good," Colby said. "The more scum they take off the streets, the better." "There's something else." Tom pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. "Job offer. Private security firm based out of Charlotte. They heard about what we did here, discreetly, don't worry, and they're interested in hiring veterans for protective services. Real work, good pay, and you be home more often." Colby looked at the folder, then at Stephanie. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should your old man retire from the Army?" Stephanie grinned. "I think you've earned it." They finished breakfast talking about the future, about where they'd live, what kind of school Stephanie would attend, how to rebuild a life that had been shattered and scattered. It wouldn't be easy. There would be therapy, legal battles, the slow work of healing. But they'd face it together. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, and for the first time in a long time, Colby Cunningham felt something he hadn't felt since the divorce: peace. Not the absence of war, the presence of victory. Epilogue. 6 months later, Warner Moses sent a photo to their group chat. It showed a news article. Vicente Ellis had been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Demetrius Shelton got 18. Curtis Hester, 15. The Ellis Collective was finished, its members scattered or imprisoned. Colby showed the article to Stephanie over dinner that night. Their new home, a quiet suburb where the worst crime was teenagers speeding through stop signs. She read it, nodded, and went back to her homework. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah." She looked up, and her smile was genuine. "I'm just glad it's over." "Me too." Later that night, after Stephanie had gone to bed, Colby sat on the porch with a beer in his phone. The group chat was active, veterans checking in, sharing stories, planning their next reunion. Mason had gotten married. Felix was teaching at a community college. Irving had started a business. All of them building new lives after the war, after the brotherhood, after everything. Tom's message came through last. "Proud of you, Colby. Not many men would have done what you did. Fewer could have pulled it off. You earned this peace." Colby typed back. "Couldn't have done it without you. Any of you. That's what brothers are for." He put the phone down and stared at the stars, thinking about Stephanie's photo, the one that started everything. The bruises and fear that had driven him to cross state lines, to gather his brothers, to wage a war against a criminal empire. Some people called it revenge. Colby called it justice. Either way, it was done, and his daughter was safe. That was all that mattered. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.